In the silent dark between stars, the most terrifying things are not the creatures that hunt us but the choices that put us in their path. Alien, Romulus returns to the franchise's roots with cramped corridors, failing lights, corporate lies, and a new group of survivors who do not realize what they're walking into. This recap follows Rain Carradine and her small crew from an oppressive mining colony to a derelict orbital station where a familiar life cycle reawakens. It is written for a long-form voiceover and stops before the climax so your audience can experience the final turn themselves. You will get a complete spoiler-safe walkthrough of the setup, major reveals, character dynamics, and escalating horror without reproducing the finale. Each section is labeled with placeholder timestamps so you can match your edit later. Paragraphs are fully fleshed out and self-contained, focusing on who the characters are, what they decide, what the environment does to them, and how the threat grows from rumor to relentless pursuit. The story opens on the colony known as Jackson's Star, a place where rust and ash coat every surface, and the sky is a permanent shade of bruise. Miners wear patch pressure suits and march to shifts that never end, because the Wayland-Yutani Corporation owns the oxygen, the food, and the future. Rain Carradine is a second-generation worker who has already met the company's moving goalposts for freedom, only to have her contract extended by a clause she never agreed to. Her only family is Andy, a synthetic built by her late father who calls her sister and follows her with absolute loyalty. Rain's days repeat with the precision of machinery. She hauls ore, watches managers revise quotas in carefully polite language, and calculates how many lifetimes it would take to pay the debt she never chose. At night, she stares through a cracked dome at the cold glitter of orbit and imagines a life that does not require permission to breathe. The colony establishes the film's themes in miniature: exploitation disguised as opportunity, autonomy negotiated by contract, and the way hope can harden into rebellion. Tyler, Rain's former lover, returns with a plan that sounds reckless because it is the only kind of plan that might work. In a decaying data cache, he found coordinates for Renaissance Station, an orbital facility rumored to hold functioning cryogenic pods and a small shuttle. If they can reach it and repair what needs repairing, they can leave the system for a safer world. Tyler brings in his younger sister Kay, who hides a pregnancy that would get her fired and blacklisted, Bjorn, a blunt engineer who distrusts synthetics on principle, and Navarro, a mechanic whose nerve steadies the group when tempers fray. Rain agrees because staying has become a slow kind of death. Andy insists on coming because protecting Rain was written into his code and carved into whatever passes for his heart. They time their theft for a maintenance window, slip a battered shuttle from its cradle, and ride a column of flame into orbit. As the colony shrinks beneath them, Rain feels relief mixed with dread. Freedom is finally in reach, but her father's warnings about corporate secrets echo as the stars swallow the ship. Renaissance Station hangs against the planet like a gutted cathedral, its twin modules, Romulus and Remus, joined by a narrow spine of corridors that flicker with intermittent power. Docking is a negotiation with dead machinery, aerotones, grinding latches, and the smell of cold metal when the hatch finally slides open. Inside, frost scallops the walls, meal trays sit where hands dropped them, and scuffed floors tell the story of people who left in a hurry. It looks abandoned, but nothing truly empty hums like this. Andy restores partial systems and starts reading logs. The words that should comfort them do the opposite: biological incident, quarantine protocol, evacuation order. The group moves carefully, mapping routes in chalk like miners underground. The first warning is a leathery structure the size of a helmet, fused to the floor of a lab and pulsing faintly with its own rhythm. Navarro leans close with a scanner because curiosity is what keeps people alive in space until the day it does not. The egg opens like a flower learning to hate the sun, and the thing inside crosses the distance to Navarro's face in a single impossible motion. The mask fogs, the tail coils, and the sound in the room becomes a chorus of breath and metal. Bjorn pries, Rain pulls, and Andy finds the fastest way to save a life. He kills power to Navarro's suit to make the creature release. Acid blood eats through a grate and hisses into the darkness. When Navarro wakes, he says he is fine. The group pretends to believe him because belief is the only thing keeping panic from turning into paralysis. They argue in whispers about retreat versus salvage. Tyler wants to press on because leaving with nothing means returning to the colony with nothing. Rain warns that staying means daring the unknown in a place that advertised its own disaster. They compromise the way scared people often do, by pretending the future will take pity on them. Then the lights shudder, the temperature drops, and something in the vents moves with purpose. Navarro's body convulses in the med bay, and the scream that follows is not his voice anymore. A small, slick creature tears free of his chest, stares with a skull where eyes should be, and vanishes into a duct before anyone remembers how to breathe. Shock becomes noise. Kay vomits into a waste bin, Bjorn blames Andy for not detecting an infection he could not detect, and Tyler points a cutting torch at the air as if courage can scorch shadows away. The station answers by cutting power to half the deck, leaving them lit by emergency strips that make every corridor look longer and emptier. They start carrying tools like weapons because tools are what they know. Nail guns become rifles, torches become swords, and wrenches become clubs. Every sound becomes a decision point. Run and you die tired, freeze and you die with your eyes open. Rain forces the group to move because stillness feels like consent to be hunted. The newborn is not newborn for long, and the station's ventilation groans like a throat learning a new language. Andy traces a live power signature to a control center in the Remus module, which means a chance to override quarantine and access the hangar. The path there is a map of corporate sin. They pass doors welded shut from the outside, discover a room full of suspended bodies cocooned into the architecture, and find a wall of recorded logs that describe what Renaissance Station was built to do. Scientists arrived with orders to study an organism recovered from deep space, to cross thresholds ethical boards never would, and to record results until they ran out of subjects or breath. The logs are clinical to the point of cruelty. But the images behind them are unmistakable. Embryos stored like inventory, human hosts listed by number, and a note from an administrator who writes that weaponizing biology is not a choice but a competitive necessity. Rain understands then that they did not stumble into an accident. They walked into the proof that the company would rather break people than lose a market. Somewhere between the lines is a reference to a hybrid that adapted faster than expected and learned the shape of the station better than the people who built it. The alien takes Bjorn on a landing where gravity fails for just long enough to make a misstep fatal. He shoves Kay through a hatch and turns to fight because that is who he is, and the tail that finds his ribcage answers him without mercy. His death narrows the hallways and teaches the survivors how fast resolve can be spent. Tyler, who loved the idea of escape more than the work of it, panics and suggests using Andy as a diversion. Rain hits him so hard that he remembers how to be ashamed. The group's last common ground is Rain's insistence that no one gets fed to the machine to save the machine. In a maintenance office, Andy uncovers a transmission queue that shows external contacts knew about Renaissance Station's research and wrote contingency plans that treated human life as a variable. The list of signatories includes names the survivors recognize from the colony. Discovering that their own world was part of the same circuit of indifference changes the mission from salvage to survival and from survival to witness. If they die here, the story dies too. Rain decides they will not make it easy to bury. To reach the docking bay, they must cut through a spine of corridors that now breathe with moving shadows. The alien is no longer a rumor, it has learned their roots and prefers ambush to spectacle. When plumbing ruptures, scalding steam turns a hallway into weather. When a console shorts, blue fire sketches their silhouettes on the wall like a mural of future ghosts. Andy shoulders a bulkhead door that is trying to close, and Kay, shaking but steady, fixes a jammed latch with hands that remember building things instead of breaking them. The station becomes an obstacle course designed by a biology that understands fear. They arrive at the bay in a chorus of alarms, decompression warnings, reactor temperature spikes, and a quarantine lockout that will not lift without a manual override. Rain drops into the control pit and starts pulling panels the way miners pull rock, by feel and by fury. The creature hits the deck above them so hard the metal bows. Andy braces the door with his body, hydraulics hissing against a frame stronger than bone. Kay clutches her stomach and promises the child inside that there will be a sky without sirens. The door buckles, the panel yields. A bank of status lights crosses from red into something like hope, and the screen cuts to the edge of a decision we will not narrate. Alien, Romulus treats the xenomorph as the natural consequence of human appetite. The real monster wears a logo, writes policies, and calls exploitation a project plan. Rain's arc is about refusing to be a line item. She begins as a worker who survives because she can absorb indignity and ends as a leader who survives because she will not. Andy complicates the old binary between human and synthetic by proving that loyalty is a choice, not a species trait. His logic reads as tenderness because it keeps people alive without asking for thanks. The film also restores the franchise's physicality. Corridor horror works when you can hear boots slipping on wet steel, when air tastes like copper, and when a flashlight beam hits rivets that look like teeth. The young cast is not fearless. They are brave because they are afraid and move anyway. The setting lets the story ask old questions with new urgency. What does a person owe to strangers when saving themselves would be simpler? How much of your future are you willing to trade for orders you never wrote? The answers are written in sweat, blood, and choices that no one will ever commemorate. By the time the survivors reach the docking bay, they have uncovered what Renaissance Station did, watched friends die for seconds they could not spare, and learned that the company would rather erase witnesses than admit design. Rain's stubborn will, Andy's engineered devotion turned real, and Kay's quiet determination carry them to the threshold of escape. The alarms are still screaming, the creature is still hunting, and the machinery still tries to choose for them. We stop at that threshold so your viewers can feel the last stretch themselves without having it explained. This script gives you a full, detailed path through Alien, Romulus without crossing the final line. It starts in debt and ends at a door with characters who refuse to be defined by the company that would own them. Use these sections to pace your voiceover, drop your own timestamps into the brackets, and cut your footage to the rhythm of dread, discovery, loss, and defiance. The conclusion remains yours to share in your video, but everything up to that moment is here in complete form.